right, so typically the first thing that I consume in the day is a cup of black coffee. Now this cup is extremely full, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't spill a little bit on the way over here. Now black coffee, of course, is gonna be 0 calories, so it's not gonna inadvertently bring us over our calorie count for the day. And on top of that, it contains roughly 80 milligrams of caffeine. So not only is it gonna suppress our appetite, but it's actually also gonna give us a little bit of an energy boost, obviously, as we all know. Both of which are gonna help us push back our meals a little bit further in the day and really restrict the amount of calories that we end up consuming. So while cutting, I typically aim for about 2,200 to 2,400 calories per day, as well as 0.8 to about 1.1 grams per pound of body weight of protein. Now, while you can use these protein numbers yourself, and I actually recommend you use those protein numbers yourself, it's very important to note that the calorie numbers are gonna be different for everybody. Somebody the exact same size as me and with the exact same activity level could be cutting on 2,000 calories or 2,600 calories and be getting the same exact results. Now, in order to determine the amount of calories that you should be cutting on, I recommend going on a TDEE, your total daily energy expenditure calculator, and finding a rough estimate, subtracting 500 to 600 calories from that number, eating at that number for about 2 weeks, and adjusting accordingly based on how much weight you gain or lose in that time. Hopefully you aren't gaining weight if you subtract 600 from a maintenance calculator. That would be really unfortunate. And I'm not gonna get into any more detail about setting up your calories for your own cut, mainly just because there's a lot of videos on YouTube that get really in depth, and I'll link one down in the description, or maybe here, I'll put it up on the screen right now. A video from Vitruvian Physique that I highly recommend. It's actually the video that I used to set up my calories and macros for my very first cut. So while I have the coffee, I usually like to get whatever grunt work out of the way that I can that day, and then move on to what is, in my opinion, the #1 most effective, overlooked, and I guess you could call it secret fat loss technique, and that's walking. So on a typical day, I probably like to get around 10 to 12K steps, but on a cut, I actually like to up my steps all the way to around 15,000. Now what this does, when you increase your steps, your general body activity, you're actually gonna be increasing your maintenance for that day by a significant amount of calories. And so what that does is it makes it a whole lot easier to hit an aggressive deficit of anywhere from 600 to 800 calories. Walking, of course, is very time consuming, and especially now that the world's on quarantine, it can be kind of difficult for us to find open spaces that we can comfortably walk around in. Now I'm extremely lucky in that I live on an orchard, so I have lots of space that I can walk around in freely. But for those of us that are stuck inside or stuck in smaller spaces, you guys don't worry, you're not totally out of luck. There's some techniques that I use myself, particularly when it's raining, or if I'm somewhere where I don't have a good place to walk for that day, or if I don't have time really to even go on a walk that day. Now it takes a lot of dedication, but you'd be surprised how quickly you can hit 10K steps by just moving around and pacing every time that you get a little downtime. Let's say you're watching a commercial, or you're frying something and or cooking something, and you have 10, 15 minutes maybe to just move around. Another good one is brushing your teeth. There's 2 minutes that you get 200 steps, just pacing back and forth in whatever space you have, brushing your teeth. Now, of course, you might look kind of crazy if you're pacing back and forth, but that's just a sacrifice you're gonna have to make, I guess. So it's about 1 p.m. now. I think it's time to get into our first real meal of the day, which is gonna be, for me, I like to have an actual breakfast, even though it's already well in the afternoon. So this meal is gonna consist of 3 whole eggs, 4 strips of bacon, not thick cut, because that is gonna be about 50% more calories per slice, as well as 20 grams of Parmesan cheese to add to the eggs, and 1 serving of fruit, which for me is typically an orange. All right, so it's finally time to eat the first meal. Here you can see it again. Presentation is looking nice. Real quickly before I get into this, I want to address a few things. First of all, obviously bacon is really high in fat content, and a lot of people might assume that if you're trying to get in shape, trying to lose fat, you might not want to be eating bacon. The truth is that really all that matters is calories in versus calories out. So if you have the room for the bacon, you can, it's going to be all right. But I do think that it's important to note that I don't eat bacon every single day, but I probably have it roughly 4 to 5 times a week. On the other days, I like to get in a little bit of a leaner meat, like a ground turkey, something that's not quite as processed, not quite as fatty. Now the second thing is, you're going to notice that other than the orange here, there's really virtually no carbs in this meal. That's not really by design. That's actually because if you're anything like me, you can't process gluten very well. If you're one of the lucky ones and you can eat gluten without having any problems, I would go ahead and add a piece of toast to this. Sometimes what I like to do is add in a serving of hash browns, but unfortunately I'm out of hash browns at the moment, and there weren't any left at the store. So this is what we're gonna be going with today. Calories and the protein for this meal is gonna be on the screen right now. Also note that the piece of toast is gonna be included in the calories because that is what I would typically eat. And I would actually recommend eating another carb source with this meal if you can. But let's dig into this meal. Alright, so breakfast was delicious, but it's 3 p.m. now and we're back in the kitchen, time for our pre-workout meal. Now some people might prefer to switch this meal with perhaps the orange that we had at breakfast. I eat it this way. The carbohydrate source right before you work out might give you a little bit extra energy boost, but for me the difference is really negligible. So our pre-workout meal is going to be protein pudding, which is basically just 1 serving of plain non-fat Greek yogurt, as well as 1 serving of sugar-free, fat-free Jell-O pudding mix. Now some people might say, hey, why don't you just have pudding, or probably, why don't you just have normal yogurt? You could just go for the vanilla yogurt. I like to do it this way because it actually gets you about 2 to 3 more grams of protein per serving, depending on the brand of yogurt that you go with. And it actually is gonna decrease your calories. This is gonna end up around 130 calories. Typically what you'll find is that 1 serving of flavored yogurt is anywhere from 130 to upwards of 200. So I just find the macros and calories to be a little bit more friendly this way, and I like the taste a little bit better personally. All right, so the protein pudding is ready. Some people might recommend letting this sit in the fridge for 5 to 10 minutes. I find, at least with the chocolate flavor, you really don't need to. So I'm just gonna finish this real quick. And then it's time to head to the gym. We got leg day today, squats. So I'll see you guys out there. All right, so we're back in the kitchen yet again. This time, it's time for our post-workout meal. Of course, we want to keep ourselves saturated with protein during our anabolic window, which in reality is more like 24 hours, not 1 or 2. But of course, our next meal, you guessed it, is gonna be a protein shake. So this is actually pretty simple but delicious protein shake. The only ingredients you're really gonna need unsweetened vanilla coconut milk. You could use almond milk, or if you really wanted, you could use regular milk, but I try to avoid lactose. Next thing you're gonna need is 1 serving of frozen strawberries. You could also replace it with any other sort of frozen berry that you want, or even probably frozen mangoes, but strawberries happen to be my favorite, or my fruit of choice. Next, you're gonna need 1 scoop of vanilla protein powder. Now, the brand that I'm using is Body Fortress, and that's like Walmart's kind of cheap brand. I wouldn't recommend this one, honestly. There's a lot of better flavors that you can get, but this is the one that we're gonna be using for now. This last part's kind of optional, but I like to include my creatine in my protein shake so that I don't have to take it just by the spoonful later in the day. Some people are fine doing it that way. I prefer to take it in the shake, but let's get this made. All right, so the protein shake is done. One thing that's very nice about this recipe is that it creates a lot of volume. So the calories are gonna be up on the screen right now. This, of course, is only 300 calories, as you can see. Now, as I mentioned before, feel free to experiment with the different fruits and different liquids in this shake, but just note that as you change those, it's gonna change the calorie count just slightly, so you should be wary of that. So 3, 2, 1. Oh, brain freeze. Oh, I've had like 5 bites. Woo! Maybe don't try and eat this quickly. Woo! All right, there it is. Protein shake, all gone. I'm incredibly full. And what time is it, 4:30? Oh, to be honest, I'm not looking forward to eating dinner in an hour and a half, 2 hours, but I think it's time to go step it off, burn some more calories. So, pray for my stomach. Okay, so I've worked up quite an appetite getting my steps in. It's just after 7 now, and you're probably wondering, what's for dinner? Well, let me tell you.
You can have a great beef dinner in no time at all. Well, almost no time at all. Beef. It's what's for dinner.
So we're gonna be making Korean beef bowls, and if that sounds a little too fancy for you, don't worry. It's only gonna be 4 to 5 ingredients, depending how fancy you're feeling. The first thing you're gonna need is just white rice, and I'm lazy, so I like to use the instant rice. This only takes 5 minutes as opposed to 20 minutes for a normal rice. The second, and probably second most important ingredient, you could really make it with just these two if you wanted, but it'd be kind of bland, is lean ground beef, 90-10. We're gonna use 1/3 pound of this. Make sure you get 90-10, because if you get 80-20 or any fattier cuts, it's gonna drastically increase the amount of calories in the same amount of meat. The last 2 things we're gonna need is a little bit of soy sauce. Now you can tell this is tamari, gluten-free soy sauce here, because as I mentioned before, I do not eat gluten. And we're also gonna be using sriracha, just to add a little bit of flavor. Not too much, and it doesn't get too spicy, but it can if you want it to. Mom, do we have toasted sesame seeds? Also for flavor, but this is gonna be depending on how many calories you have. I'm gonna use it because I didn't eat the bread earlier this morning. We're gonna use a little bit of sesame oil for flavor, or instead, you could use a little bit of sesame seeds, but I would be very careful when adding sesame seeds. You can see, actually I don't know if you can see it, but I'm not gonna risk the autofocus here. 1 tablespoon is 170 calories, so use these very, very sparingly if you're gonna use these. All right, don't let the music fool you. We're gonna bust out the voiceover for this one. So first things first, we just gotta cook the rice. Now, like I said, this rice cooks a little bit odd. You just add it straight to boiling water and immediately turn off the heat. Let it sit for 5 minutes and then fluff it up, and then it's good. Good to go. Next, we're gonna weigh out the beef. So I said 1/3 of a pound is what we're gonna be using. That transfers to about 5.3 ounces here. So once you get that measured, I like to piece it apart in the pan. I find that it gives it a nicer texture and a little bit better and more consistent size to the beef than if you were to just break it up with a spatula. But we're just gonna brown that beef here, and once it gets browned around all the sides, we're gonna start to add in our soy sauce. We're just gonna let the beef cook in the soy sauce for a little bit. Next, we're gonna add in a little bit of sriracha into that soy sauce and beef mixture. We're We're gonna mix up the sriracha into the sauce a little bit and then saturate the beef with the sauce and just let that continue to cook. So the rice here is done. Like I said, we're just gonna fluff it up. This meal's basically done. We're gonna put the rice into the bowl, sprinkle a little bit of sesame oil on top just for flavoring. We're gonna mix it up a little bit here, and now we're gonna add in the beef, which is nicely browned, done, ready to go. And just for a little garnish, I'm gonna sprinkle on some sesame seeds, and we're good to go. All right, so dinner is finally ready. It looks and smells really good. The calories are gonna be up on the screen right now. Keep in mind, I did add a little bit of sesame oil. Woo! Keep in mind, I did add a little bit of sesame oil and sesame seeds, which is gonna increase the calories by about 100, 150 based on the amount that I put. So on some days, obviously, I would exclude the sesame oil. And if I really wanted like a bag of chips or a chocolate bar later in the day, then those sesame seeds and sesame oil would be a good thing to cut out. Also, I'm gonna be drinking a sparkling ice, only 5 calories for the entire thing. They taste really good. I have the cherry limeade flavor here right now, which is probably my least favorite flavor, but it's okay, it's still good. Now, I'm starving, so I'm just gonna start eating. All right, so I just finished eating dinner. That meal was really good. I honestly make that meal probably 2 times a week on average, maybe even 3. It's really easy to make. I'd recommend trying it yourself, assuming that you're somebody who eats meat. So if you've been paying attention, you'll realize that we're only at roughly 1,850 calories right now. So of course we do have 1 meal left. Now that meal's gonna be more of a late night snack. It doesn't involve any cooking actually. It's just a bunch of high protein, really tasty snacks that I personally enjoy eating. So I'll take you guys there right now and we can check out what the last meal is. Okay, so finally we got our late night snack. This is a bit of a smorgasbord. So the first thing we got here is an ounce of beef jerky. Next we have 1 serving of Wisps cheese crackers. We're gonna have a serving of cottage cheese, which is 113 grams, you can see. A rice cake and 1 cup of sugar-free, fat-free chocolate jelly. All right, so here it is, the last meal. I think probably the weirdest thing on this is gonna be the Wisps, which is just a fried cheese cracker, basically. This a serving size, which this is exactly 1 serving right here, even though a lot of the pieces are kind of crushed up, is about 150 calories, exactly 150 calories, 13 grams of protein. So the macros for this entire, well, the calories and the protein for this entire meal will be on the screen right now. All right, so that's gonna conclude my full day of eating. The total calories, I believe, is 220, about 170 grams of protein today. So some days, like I said, I eat a little bit more, I eat a little bit less. There's a little bit of wiggle room in here. If I really wanted, like I said earlier, a bag of chips or a serving of chips, I guess, a chocolate bar or something, I can fit that in. Flexible dieting is really the key. So that's the end of the video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been working on this video basically non-stop for the past 9 or 10 hours. So if you did enjoy it, it would really mean a lot to me if you did hit the like button. Either way, thank you guys for watching and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Deuces.